All right, listeners, I think you know that we are part of the Radiotopia network, which is basically a network built on the idea that you should support the most creative, independent audio makers around. No one, and I mean no one, embodies the Radiotopia ethos more than Benjamin Walker and his show Theory of Everything. Benjamin, who I've known for a long time, has been making beautiful, personal, sprawling audio documentaries for decades that help us understand the very strange world we live in. And now he has a new series called Not All Propaganda is Art. The new series goes back to the 1950s when Western security agencies like the CIA paid artists, writers, and intellectuals to fight the cultural Cold War.
The CIA funds were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
Gloria Steinem, activist who sees the CIA as a sort of enlightened pal or rich uncle, there is another viewpoint.
Look, if you're listening to this show, I know you like secret histories. I know you like a mix of culture and politics and shadowy figures. So what are you waiting for? Not All Propaganda is Art from Benjamin Walker. You can find it now wherever you listen or at theoryofeverythingpodcast.com. This day is brought to you by Progressive. Are you driving your car or doing laundry right now? Podcasts go best when they're bundled with another activity. Kind of like Progressive home and auto policies. They're best when bundled too. Having those two policies together makes insurance easier and could help you save. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. Quote a home and car bundle today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avergan. This day, February 27, 1860, in New York City, Abraham Lincoln delivered a speech at the Cooper Union, a private college and society of letters that was established actually just the year before. So I suppose this is a good get, as they say, for the new college, but it was also a boon for Lincoln. He was relatively unknown at that point. Listen to this. Just about a month before, a newspaper in Philadelphia had published a list of 21 prominent candidates for president in that fall's election, and Lincoln was not even on that list. So maybe he's 22nd on the list of possible candidates. But in that speech at the Cooper Union, he put himself on the map. He would, of course, go on to win the presidency in the fall of 1860, and many credit that Cooper Union speech with not just introducing him as a viable candidate, but also really laying out his intellectual vision, his blueprint for how he thought about the major issues of the day. Of course, the main issue, slavery and the looming fracturing of the country. So here to discuss Abraham Lincoln's Cooper Union speech are, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Columbia and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hi, Jody.
Hey there.
Kellie, you have a lot of Lincoln on the brain these days.
I do. I am in a 4-part documentary on Apple TV called Lincoln's Dilemma, for those who want to check it out. And we talk all things Lincoln, and it's been really exciting to be a part of it and to sort of like re-examine, and I think what is a really nuanced and complicated way of looking at Lincoln's presidency and the tough decisions that he had to make during the American Civil War.
Yeah, and do you go, I know it's focused a little more on the sort of decisions during the war itself, but do you go back to this moment or some of these like intellectual roots or anything?
Not quite back this far. I mean, we give him context, right, in broader strokes, certainly in the first episode, but much of the documentary is really focused on his decisions and speeches that are given during the Civil War. So the Gettysburg Address, the first and second inaugural address, which are really important.
Yeah. So this speech, what is the best main lens to look at it through? Is it a campaign speech or is it a intellectual vision speech?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I mean, he's definitely campaigning. It's not as though he's not, sort of tuned into the presidency and the campaign. But I also think it's his way of letting the public know, at least ideologically, that he's not an abolitionist he is anti-slavery. He is against the expansion of the institution of slavery. But he also wants to let slaveholders know that, like, he's okay with slavery as long as it's not growing, or as long as it's not, gaining new territory, so to speak, which feels a little contradictory because it is.
Yeah, I would say this didn't exactly square the circle. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very Solomonic Abraham Lincoln who's cutting the baby in half. It's very much a compromise speech, but it is also a piece of political persuasion. It's some insight into how Lincoln approaches politics. This is a time in politics where you have a lot of fire-breathing politicians, and that's not what Lincoln is offering up. I mean, the way that he's trying to persuade people is he goes back and he looks at the founders. Very, very common political trick to go back and find out, this is the founders supported my cause and therefore my cause is right. So he goes back and he looks at the founders and he traces the way that the majority of them allowed for decisions about slavery to be made at the federal level, right? That they weren't advocates of states' rights when it came to the issue of slavery, that there were actually things that the federal government had responsibility for. And they were willing to regulate and to limit the expansion of slavery. And that's how he makes his case for doing the same in the 1860s.
I guess another reminder, we've touched on it so much, but that what did the founders think about slavery is in many ways just a Rorschach. It lets anyone can kind of make any argument they want out of it, and we see that in here as well.
And it's interesting because he's talking about these founding fathers. About 21 of the 39 are slaveholders, so a good majority of them are speaking from their own benefit, from their own place of advantage, and also speaking during a moment in which cotton is not king just yet. And so I think that also colors their perspective about the possibilities and expansion of the institution of slavery before it really takes off.
This is hugely important because the slavery that the founders are talking about is not the slavery that Abraham Lincoln is talking about. And that expansionist drive behind slavery in the 1840s and 1850s, Lincoln's like, it'll be fine. You can have slavery where you have it now. You just can't expand into other regions. But that had been the fight that had been happening for decades at that point, which was if the United States is going to expand and you don't allow slavery in new states, pretty quickly the South is not going to have majority power, and the North and non-slaving states will have it instead. And that's why the South, there were all of these compromises in the 1840s and 1850s that you could only bring in a free state if you also brought in a slave state. So Lincoln isn't solving anything here. He's just making a case.
A case of containment, which the South sees as death. I mean, if they, in their mind, if we can't expand, we can't build upon our power, then how else are we to have longevity to this institution if everything is built upon the expansion of power, the accumulation of wealth, shareholders getting more and more money? All of this is built upon expansion. And so curtailing that signals an end to the institution for a lot of slaveholders.
And that is kind of one of the most concrete, salient things that comes out of this speech is a sort of stance on excluding slavery from territories and expansion, which, Kellie, I mean, it's interesting. I can see certainly how the South sees that as a death sentence, but it is also not. There were other candidates who were sort of very forcefully coming out as abolitionists and very forcefully sort of predicting freedom and slavery are going to have a showdown and we're going to have to settle this question once and for all. And so, Lincoln is not making the South happy, but he's not also staking out a territory here at this point that is totally in a confrontation with slavery.
Oh yeah, he's the quintessential politician, which is we're gonna give everybody everything and nothing that they want, right? Everyone is gonna be mad. No one's really gonna be happy, but we can sort of assuage how people might feel about it, and so it's interesting. I think a lot of people think that Lincoln was this abolitionist. He was not. He was merely anti-slavery because he understood how slavery undercut wages, northern wages, but he was not this. He certainly was not John Brown.
Which, as when you read about he had spent months writing this speech. And in that time that he was writing it from when he moved from Illinois to the East, in that time is when the John Brown raid happens. And so you just get this kind of like really, really salient idea of what fierce abolition looks like. And it appears to have, I don't know, spooked Lincoln or set some outer boundary that he was not willing to go to.
And yet, even though there's all of this nuance in the positions between anti-slavery and compromise and abolition and revolution, when it comes to the way that slaveholders see these politicians, they see as much threat coming from Abraham Lincoln as they do from somebody like John Brown. And that signals how little room for compromise there actually is. He can be as nuanced and careful as he wants, but as we see, as soon as he's elected, he is treated as somebody who wants to drive slavery out of the United States altogether.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you're not for us, you're against us. At least that's how the South sees it.
Yeah. So to the speech and the impact of the speech itself, then, it's funny. I kind of like over the course of this conversation, I'm starting to maybe think this speech is much a signal of kind of Lincoln's unsteadiness as anything. People think of this as the moment Lincoln announced himself and so forth, and it did turn him into a star. But it also probably like signaled more than anything that this person was trying to figure it out and was slowly working his way uncomfortably towards a stance. So why is it then that the speech was a sensation? Why is it that it did sort of announce this new person who then very quickly became the front runner for presidency?
I think there's a number of factors that go into this. One, this is one of Lincoln's longest speeches. Lincoln is known for his
just willed
brevity.
people into submission. I will only stop if you pledge to vote for me in this fall's election.
I mean, this speech is 7,000 words long. I mean, this is longer than the telegram.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Kennan has nothing on this guy.
I know. And it's also during a moment in which, people expect speeches to be long. It's a form of entertainment. People are going to sort of settle in and listen to a person talk for a very, very long period of time. And he does that, and he gives, he's telling stories, and he's bringing nuance, and he's, really drawing the audience in, so much so that people are like, oh my gosh, I heard about the speech. You're amazing. Can you come speak here? Can you come speak here? And in a short amount of time, he gives speeches in 11 cities in 12 days. So there's a real momentum that's happening with each speech that he gives after this because, the word is spreading that Abraham Lincoln is coming to town and he's this dynamic speaker. You should hear him out.
Yeah, and this gives you a sense of the kind of star power that Lincoln had, that he was so charismatic and such an entertaining speaker that he catches fire, right? When people see him, they want to hear more from him. It's not just the words on the page, but it is Lincoln himself as a person and as a personality, and people just flock to him whenever he's giving these speeches.
He also flips expectations because people thought that he was weird. They thought that he was kind of funny looking and who is this guy from Illinois or Kentucky? And so he's kind of subversive in the way that he makes you think that he's weak or sort of different, and then he endears you to his character.
Yeah. And, no surprise, the fact that this happens in New York and Manhattan is, it's like any band, you got to play downtown New York if you're going to break through, right? And so the right people are going to be in the room, and and so here you have the editors of the New York Tribune and the New York Times and the New York Post are all at that speech, and so from there you get that sort of you level up in terms of influence for sure.
That matters a lot too because newspapers are political instruments in the 1850s and 1860s. So if you're talking to all of those editors and those editors are won over, then they're going to start writing really favorable stories and really move you to the top of the conversation. So even though he wasn't on that list of 21, suddenly those editors are going to make him top of mind for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So he quickly moves up that list of 21. And then, of course, that summer, there's the nominating convention in Chicago. He receives the nomination. It ends up being Seward is his main rival, but he, on the first ballot, loses to Seward. And then eventually there's rounds of voting and he overtakes. I'm sure you can just rattle this up, but do you want to just list all the 21 people who were ahead of him at that time?
That's you, Kellie. You're the 19th century person here.
No idea.
Seward might be the only one who we actually remember, but there was Salmon P. Chase of Ohio and Edward Bates of Missouri and Simon Cameron of Pennsylvania. All these names. You lose to
All
Lincoln,
these names
it's okay.
no one knows anymore.
All right, and then one last tidbit. Maybe we'll play a little audio of this as we go out, but on the 144th anniversary of this occasion, Sam Waterston, that's a good choice to do.
That's
Lincoln.
a really good choice.
Got a little weirdo vibe to him too. Reenacted this speech in the Great Hall at Cooper Union, and there's good audio of that floating around if you want to sort of get a sense.
Yeah, I've watched it. It's actually really good.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good.
So, any final thoughts, Kellie? And we can, mention the Apple TV series again. But I do gather, like we've been saying, this idea of Lincoln as evolving and really for lots of different reasons, finally moving to that stance. I mean, is that kind of the heart of what the show is trying to accomplish?
It absolutely is. The Lincoln of the Stephen Douglas debates is not the same Lincoln of the second inaugural address. I mean, which is a complete 180. He shifts so much in his thinking. And I think out of all the presidents in American history, that is at least what I appreciate most about Abraham Lincoln is his willingness to pivot, to listen to the people, to listen to Frederick Douglass, and, to take counsel about what would be the best direction for the country and to make these decisions that would benefit everyone, not just white people.
Yeah. All right. Well, the documentary is out now. Apple doesn't need our help spreading the word. Documentary is out now.
I got this.
Yeah. But Kellie's in it, so you got to go check that out. And friend of the show, Jelani Cobb, is an executive producer. So the vibes.
There's
are good
a lot of
around
great
it.
historians in it. If you want to see all the great Lincoln historians, check it out.
Cool. Great. All right. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Neither let us be slandered from our duty by false accusations against us, nor frightened from it by menaces of destruction to the government, nor of dungeons for ourselves. Let us have faith that right makes might. And in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it.
Support for This Day in Esoteric Political History comes from Odoo. If you feel like you're wasting time and money with your current business software or just want to know what you could be missing, then you'll need to join the millions of others who have switched to Odoo. Odoo is the affordable, all-in-one management software with a library of fully integrated business applications that help you get more done in less time for a fraction of the price. To learn more, visit odoo.com/thisday. That's odoo.com/thisday. Odoo, modern management made simple.
Radiotopia.